Namaskar and welcome to Sunset Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show Perspective, where we bring you detailed analysis of key national and international issues. Today we're going to talk about India-ASEAN relationship. Now, India is hosting the special ASEAN-India Foreign Ministers meeting on 16th and 17th of June to mark the 30th anniversary of its dialogue relations and the 10th anniversary of its strategic partnership with ASEAN. Addressing the meeting, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar emphasized that the 10-nation grouping's role is more important today given the geopolitical challenges and uncertainties faced by the world. Now, ASEAN is central to India's Act East policy and its vision for the wider Indo-Pacific. ASEAN-India dialogue relations started with the establishment of sectoral partnership in 1992, which graduated to full dialogue partnership in December 1995, summit-level partnership in 2002, and strategic partnership in 2012. Now, the ongoing Indo-Asian collaboration is guided by the Plan of Action 2021-2025, which was actually adopted in 2020. In today's episode, we'll discuss and analyze all aspects of this relationship and what is the road ahead. And for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you. Beginning with, we have with us in the studio former Mr. Ashok Sajjanhar, who's joining us. Welcome, Mr. Sajjanhar, to Sunset TV Studios. We're also joined by Mr. Alok Bansal, Director, India Foundation, and Dr. Shriram Cholia, Foreign Affairs expert, is also joining us. Welcome, both of you gentlemen as well. Let me begin with you, Mr. Sajjanhar, and let's start by, taking an overview of how the relationship has been. I pointed out some important dates in terms of this journey, this 30-year-long journey. But when we evaluate the key aspects of this relationship on all fronts, strategic as well as economical, how would you assess that?
I think the progress has been good. It has been satisfactory. And the geopolitical uncertainties today, I think, give us the possibility of strengthening this relationship further. Now, Vishal, as you said, you very correctly took a tour of the relationship as it has evolved. 1992 sectoral, 1995 dialogue, 2002 summit, 2012 strategic. But also 1992, we had the Look East policy, and 2014, we had the Act East policy. And when the Act East policy was launched, then it was, when the Prime Minister went, this was in Myanmar in November 2014. And then he identified three particular aspects, the three C's as he called them. Number one, connectivity. Number two, commerce. Number three, culture. So I think these are the particular aspects on which we have been working. But along with that, we have had in 2017, at the East Asia Summit in Philippines, in Manila. On the sidelines, we also launched what is known as the Indo-Pacific, and we also launched the Quad. And that is because of the security aspects in that region, particularly in the South China Sea, but broadly over the bigger Indo-Pacific region. And after that, when the Prime Minister visited also in the Shangri-La dialogue, he gave our outlook as far as the Indo-Pacific is concerned.
Okay.
Right now, when we are the stage at which we are today, what we are witnessing is that the whole world and this region and India, we are just trying to come out of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Indeed.
So that is a huge challenge that faces. We had thought that, we had got out of it after 2 years plus. But that doesn't seem to be the case because these new variants and new waves, they keep coming back.
Okay.
Then after that, we have this Russia-Ukraine conflict that is going on. Now, it might be far away from here as far as Asia is concerned, ASEAN, India. It is far away because it's located in Europe. But that notwithstanding, India and the ASEAN countries, we are also affected by the headwinds.
There are implications.
There are implications we've seen as far as energy is concerned. Many of these countries are also energy importers, significant energy importers. India is definitely. 85% of our oil is imported. So when we see that the price of oil goes from about $60 to $70 a barrel to more than $120 a barrel, it of course impacts on our energy security. Then food security, because food prices are, have gone through the roof, and there is scarcity because both Russia and Ukraine are, so to say, the food baskets of the world. And along with that, it is the fertilizer insecurity, lack of availability, the disruption in supply chains. So there are huge
Indeed,
challenges.
that's a huge gamut there, and those aspects which you brought out, Mr. Sajjanar, of course, are the key aspects. Let's also bring in, Mr. Bansal and Dr. Cholia here. Mr. Bansal, I'd like to start with you. Mr. Sajjanar referred to 3 Cs, and one of them is really most important. That's the connectivity part. The reason why I'm bringing that up is recently there was a conclave which was held in, Guwahati as well, and wherein representatives from most of these ASEAN countries were there. And there was a lot of focus on how connectivity in that part of the region will give a lot of boost to India's Act East policy and then eventually lead to a lot of economic benefit for all the partners, not only for ASEAN countries, but also for us.
See, firstly, we need to understand that Act East policy is not a matter of choice, but it is a question of survival and India's growth. If India has to grow in double digits, if we want to actually grow in double digits, we need to have an Act East policy where we can access raw materials from the East as well as access the markets of the Eastern countries. Now, maritime connectivity with these countries is fairly well established. What we were looking was for an overland connectivity from Northeast India to Southeast Asia. And that would have actually brought the full potential of the Northeast India also into play, which has actually been stymied for various reasons. Unfortunately, ever since the coup in Myanmar, the progress on this front has actually been stymied. I had personally brought large number of political leaders from Myanmar to India's Northeast to see the avenues available. And we wanted to actually have a system by which the entire Southeast Asia, up to Bangkok, of course, the highway was to be made fully operational so that people could travel through the BIMSTEC countries and go up to Bangkok. Unfortunately, there have been certain drawbacks. We have not been able to advance as fast in this particular field. But as and when this comes, not only India's Northeast, but Bangladesh, Bhutan, Myanmar, Upper Burma especially, all this region will grow phenomenally. Exponentially, actually, there will be a growth. So that is where connectivity is extremely important. Connectivity will also stabilize these regions because this access route also passes through some of the unstable regions of the Asia or this part.
Okay.
The mobilization, I think there will be stability. And of course, one thing which we need to highlight is that India and ASEAN, I think one of the issues which was brought out about South China Sea, we need to highlight, and which we have been trying to highlight, that we have worked out a system of resolving maritime disputes in Bay of Bengal.
Okay.
Which is a very adhering to rule-based international order, going in for arbitration, etc. Now, this is a role model available to ASEAN for executing it as far as South China Sea is concerned. And this actually puts certain amount of moral pressure on China, which has been the reluctant partner to go in for an arbitration or accept international jurisdiction over this particular dispute.
Okay. Dr. Cholia, one more, another important aspect here, and that's pretty much ingrained in the overall gamut of relationship which India has with ASEAN. That has been, particularly spelled out as well, that it's not just the Act East policy, but also for the wider Indo-Pacific vision, India's wider Indo-Pacific vision. So when we are looking at that aspect, and standing where we stand today, as the External Affairs Minister also in his remarks pointed out, that the role of this 10-nation grouping is more important, more significant today than it has ever been.
Very much so, Vishal. I think what Dr. Jaishankar was talking about is the real threat posed by China to all the smaller countries in the region, and especially the countries with whom it has major territorial and maritime disputes. So there are a number of ASEAN member countries that have been struggling to hold the fort against Chinese aggression and expansionism. So they have been worried in the past, and they do believe that India can help them in some way, and so can the Quad countries, if not directly, then indirectly through formations like the the new US-led Indo-Pacific Economic Forum. 7 out of the 10 ASEAN member countries joined the IPEF that the US has launched recently. It's only Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, I think, which have not joined possibly because of not wanting to upset China. But the point is the Chinese juggernaut is rolling in this region. So what Dr. Jaishankar is talking about, the geopolitical uncertainty, is diplomatically hinting at that. And therefore, when we say India he sees ASEAN as a beacon for liberalism, a beacon for multilateralism. That's the term that Dr. Jaishankar used. I think what he's saying is, and we say ASEAN centrality and unity. We don't want this region to be divided in such a way which will become easy for the Chinese to poach upon and to try and disintegrate them. Because if they are disintegrated, then the Chinese will come closer and closer into the Indian Ocean region. So if from a geopolitical sense for us, ASEAN helps to keep China away from us as much as we want. It's a kind of like a maritime buffer. So I think we want ASEAN to be strong and unified, and we want the ASEAN institutions to be further strengthened. And that's why we are saying now we want to upgrade from strategic partnership to comprehensive strategic partnership. That is the commitment we have made at the foreign minister's special meeting. And what we mean by that is that defense element is coming in more now than before. And we have now committed to ASEAN-India maritime naval exercises for the first time, all 10 countries together with us. In the past, we have done trilaterals and bilaterals with ASEAN individual countries. But now, imagine 10 together with India jointly. I think that is going to send a signal. We would like the eastern end of the Indian Ocean and the Western Pacific. That is the intersection, the area where the ASEAN countries exist. The South China Sea is very much central there. We are saying rules-based order. We are saying multilateralism. We don't want unilateral actions like what we have seen in Europe. We don't want that to be repeated in Asia. So in that context, strengthening ASEAN-India ties is very important because we are also talking about, the ASEAN defense ministers and India jointly having, a ministerial type of forum now, the way foreign ministers are doing.
Okay.
So no other regional grouping has ever been called a strategic partner of India. We have bilaterals whom we call strategic partners. But imagine a 10-member bloc that we are calling a comprehensive strategic partnership now. So I think we need to, of course, put our money where the mouth is. We need to implement a lot of the projects like Alokji was saying. But the point is the intent is there going forward for the next 5 to 10 years to strengthen this bloc. Because if this bloc weakens, then we are going to be in trouble with more and more Chinese pressure coming our way.
Okay, indeed, that is really important. The strategic part, the geopolitical situation which you were referring to, Mr. Sajanhar, and when we're talking about the strategic aspect of this relationship between India and the ASEAN, member nations. Now, what we're trying to understand here is that how it is important and why it is important. Of course, everybody knows, but from here onwards, the way it has to be navigated. Given the fact that we have to, protect our interests, we have to also send a signal to the ASEAN member nations that, we are there standing for you. And of course, addressing the elephant in the room there, the China.
No, absolutely. You're very right, Vishal, when you say that. When we speak about the relationship between India and ASEAN, we look upon it in 3 particular aspects. One is political, military, political security. The other is economic, and the third is social cultural. And what you mentioned is as far as the strategic partnership is concerned. And I think that is the difference what we can make out. What is the difference between the Look East policy and the Act East policy? I think it is the strategic component that we have sought to introduce in this. And this is what was, if you look at it, when we are now going to be exporting our BrahMos missiles first to Philippines. Now when we had our Raksha Mantri going to Vietnam, it is going there also. So I think there is a much greater convergence in views that we are seeing. And that is where the strategic partnership comes in, because so far it has been in terms of economy, it has been in terms of connectivity, whether it is land connectivity or even in terms of digital connectivity.
Cultural linkages.
Cultural, people-to-people ties, etc. Those we've been focusing. But I think right now, as you put it very rightly, Vishalji, that, the dragon in the room is China. And what we see, why has the whole concept of Indo-Pacific been revived, in 2007, When the Japanese Prime Minister, he came and addressed the Indian Parliament, he spoke about the confluence of the two seas and an arc of friendship, peace, prosperity and security between the two oceans. But then it was put to one side because China had objected at that time. But now in 2017, when again the Indo-Pacific has been revived, it is basically to confront, to counter, the expansionism, the assertiveness of China in the South China Sea.
Okay.
We have seen in 2016 that although the Permanent Court of Arbitration ruled against China, completely rejecting all its claims, but still China till now continues, its activities are unabated, whether it is all these, the Scarborough Shoal, the Paracel Island, the Spratly Island, they are being occupied, although under the UNCLOS 1982, they belong to other countries. They are being militarized. And there are artificial islands that are being created in South China Sea. But that, the last word maybe I could mention here is that it's not only the South China Sea, it's also the Indian Ocean, because you have Gwadar, you have Hambantota, you have Chakfu, you have in Oman, you have Djibouti. So all these are sought to be controlled. And the last is in the Pacific Island states. There also China seeks to go there and establish its hegemony. So I think it is against that, as Professor Chaulia very rightly mentioned, that we have to come together and we have to protect ourselves, both in terms of development as also in terms of our security.
Security. Now that sets the ground for the question which I'll put to Mr. Bansal here. Mr. Bansal, you also referred to the maritime aspect, of this relationship, and of course the maritime trade routes are equally important. But now that we are looking at the defense cooperation part of this relationship between India and ASEAN member nations, two things which we would like to understand. At what level do we stand? That's one. Two, what are the options in terms of better cooperation from here onwards? Some of them are pointed out by Dr. Chaulia as well, in terms of more naval exercises and better defense cooperation. And what goal are we trying to achieve here?
See, as far as defense cooperation is concerned, with some of the ASEAN countries, it go way back. In fact, like with Singapore, we have a robust maritime cooperation. In fact, their ships have been coming for training. We have their officers and men come to India to various training establishments for their training. Of course, then we started doing a Malacca Strait patrol with Indonesia and other countries. We did a combined maritime patrol. With Vietnam, we have again had a very, very robust defense relationship, because our equipment have been very similar, and we have actually given Vietnamese armed forces a large number of equipment and platforms, etc. With Myanmar, we have had a very, very robust cooperation as far as border security is concerned. Both the armies have acted together against insurgents, especially in the bordering regions. So with at least these three countries, we have had a robust relationship. With Indonesia, Malaysia also, we have had a fairly good maritime relationship. So has been the case with Thailand. As far as training, etc. is concerned, we have had very good relations with Thailand. So now what we are trying to do is with the ASEAN as a whole, because please understand, within ASEAN, you have countries like Laos and Cambodia, where China has extended its influence to a very great extent. In fact, these two countries have come under Chinese economic influence to a very, very great extent. And ASEAN as a whole has a very, very robust economic relationship with China. It's also got a fairly good relationship with India, but Chinese relationship with ASEAN is overwhelming.
Okay.
China factor always looms large. And that is where I was trying to say, what I said earlier was that to ASEAN, we have given them a role model, where we have one of the ASEAN countries involved, that is Myanmar. The manner in which we have resolved an extremely vexed maritime dispute in Bay of Bengal could be the role model for ASEAN countries to put China. Because South China Sea dispute, ASEAN has been trying to push China to negotiate, but China wants to negotiate with each country individually. Because each country individually, negotiations with each country individually makes that country much weaker as compared to China. Whereas ASEAN as a whole, as a big grouping, can still negotiate with China on a firm footing. So that is where I think they could take lessons from us. What is more important is that the maritime forces, to begin with, should have maritime combined exercises. And more we start operating with each other, better will be the interoperability. Because in the past also we have provided humanitarian assistance and disaster relief during tsunami and other natural calamities. So if once we have a better interoperability, we can collaborate even better.
Okay.
And this would also allow us to keep a tab on Chinese movements into our part of the world.
Okay.
Because Chinese maritime forces will have to traverse through
Indeed.
ASEAN and their
Okay.
waters nearby.
Indeed.
To come to Indian Ocean.
Indeed, that becomes really significant out there. Quick final concluding comments from you, Dr. Cholia, vis-a-vis the road ahead for this strategic partnership between India and ASEAN. We've looked at various aspects, be it security, economy, connectivity as well. But taken as a whole, where do we see this relationship moving forward?
I think we have to see it in combination with Quad in some form or the other. Because India alone, I mean, if you look at India-ASEAN trade, for example, it's only around $80 billion per annum. And we have a free trade agreement for them running for more than a decade. But ASEAN-China, as Alok was saying, is like $700 billion or more. So it's 10 times bigger, the trade volumes. So we want actually, and the US has also moved away from the Trans-Pacific Partnership in this region. And it was involved earlier and now it is pulled out. So there is a problem with only security cooperation. So I think the second leg, the economic one, we have to take it to the next level. And that's only when ASEAN countries will feel assured that they have alternatives or they can diversify. Dr. Jaishankar mentioned that. He said ASEAN is the basis for decentralized globalization, which means a globalization that is not China-centric and which is not dominated by Chinese supply chains and logistics. So for that to happen, India plus, I think we have to think about India jointly with Quad countries and others, which can help create alternative digital and physical infrastructure and connectivity and economic engagements and more freer trade, but which is based on trust, not manipulation and threat, which is what the Chinese model has been so far, as we've seen since the pandemic. So I think India plus approach ASEAN, that's kind of broader multilateralism will take us much further than simply just India-ASEAN.
Okay. Broader multilateralism there, as Dr. Cholia is pointing out. Thank you so much, Dr. Cholia, Mr. Alok Bansal and Mr. Ashok Sajanar as well for sharing your views and insight as our experts were pointing out all aspects of the India-ASEAN relationship. Of course, the strategic relationship between India and ASEAN is on a very strong footing here. But then there are challenges as well, and both sides are looking for ways to tackle those challenges, take the relationship to the next level in a manner that it benefits both India and the ASEAN member nations also. We'll come back again with a different topic. Till then, keep watching Sunset Television. Thank you.